Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Ready or Not. Wildly excited as today we approach perhaps the most important topic of our time, and that is the value of the preborn child and pro-life. Let's get into it. Alrighty, guys, we are here. If you are somehow not familiar with Seth Gruber, you can't say that anymore. I want to introduce you guys to Seth Gruber. Welcome aboard.
Thanks, Pastor David.
Man, just had a blast getting to not only learn from all that you've had to share, but getting to know you even as a person. I love when someone lines up with what it is they do.
Yeah.
And your passion for what God's called you to is incredible. What maybe people are familiar with and others are about to be is your heart and just relentless drive for the unborn or preborn child. How old are you? You married? All that good stuff?
Yeah. We live in crazy times, don't we? And it's actually the all these things actually go together. We can talk about that later if you want, but like the animating feature of both abortion and transgenderism is actually an old heresy called Gnosticism or Gnostic dualism, or body self dualism. And the Apostle Paul preached against Gnosticism. I mean, like, once again, there's actually nothing new under the sun. I'll unpack that later. Is how it's actually the same worldview. the if you get down to brass tacks, the fundamental animating feature that attempts to make sense of killing children in the womb or attempts to make sense of being trapped in the wrong body, it's actually all Gnosticism. But yeah, I'm 32, married, coming up in 8 years, 3 kids, super blessed, and been in the pro-life movement for basically my whole life. My mother was running a pregnancy center in the late 80s. She was in her late 20s at the time. My parents got married in 89. I was born in 91. But she was still directing the pregnancy center in Pasadena while pregnant with me. So she was waddling around the pregnancy center. I'm the eldest, saving babies, loving on moms and dads. And so, her body, her choice, I was her body. So I saved those babies too. So I've been a pro-life activist since I was a fetus.
My gosh, I love that.
Long time. So that's the beginning, really.
So,
and then she stepped down to homeschool me and my sisters.
How old were you when she stepped away from all that?
So she stepped down when I was born.
Okay.
As the executive director of Pregnancy Center. But we continue to do the Walk for Life every year, supporting our local center. She was kind of the representative for our local center in Whittier, California, where I grew up.
That's where I was born.
Really? Yeah, that's all. I was born in Glendora, but raised in Whittier my whole life. And my folks are still in Uptown Whittier. I went to Whittier High School. So I was homeschooled through 8th grade, Pastor David. And then I went so I'm a half-breed. I'm a filthy half-breed. And that was because I wanted to do cross-country and track, and I wanted to be a sports jock and athlete, and I wanted that whole scene. But yeah, homeschooled through 8th grade. And then went to public high school. And so when I got to high school, I realized I didn't have a lot of good answers to a lot of my pro-choice friends, which if you've, now that you got to know me a little bit, I really like the most spicy arrangement of words possible to answer questions. And so I was convicted, and my pride was probably a little bit, offended that I didn't have good answers at the time. Not answers that I didn't feel were good. And so I was 18 years old, senior in high school, and I did my senior project on the issue of abortion. So this is Nixon's alma mater. It's Whittier High. So this was the fall of 2009, because I graduated 2010. And Whittier High School told me, you can't pick the topic of abortion. And they pulled out the senior project guidelines list of the topics that they don't let students pick. And there it is. You can't pick abortion. So now I'm only embellishing a little bit. I said, here's a copy of the Constitution. You're making me read in government class. I recommend you read it or you're going to have a lawsuit on your hands. So I threatened to sue.
Yep.
Whittier High School as an 18-year-old former homeschool student.
Good job.
They didn't know who they were dealing with. I was like, I had the entire preamble of the Constitution memorized by the time I was 12. I have the entire Declaration of Independence memorized. I don't think you know who you're dealing with. And so they backed off real quick, and I did my senior project on the issue of abortion. I volunteered at a pro-life organization in Orange County, and the first thing they had me do December Christmas break of 2009 was to scan about 200 to 300 images of first trimester mutilated aborted baby photos. And so for 2 days straight, I was scanning aborted children photos on a high-quality scanner and categorizing them in their database for this organization's educational projects. It was actually a group my mom had been on the board of when it was founded. By the way, I fully defend the public use, the display of abortion imagery. I've actually shown abortion imagery in a lot of churches.
Sure.
I don't even think we talked about it because I was just too tired and traveling and jumping time zones. But Jack has let Jack let Frank Turek. I never brought it up with him.
I was there for that. Absolutely.
Yeah, but I fully defend the display of aborted baby photos. Ephesians 5:11 expose the deeds of darkness. Nobody has a problem with the graphic imagery when it's Emmett Till or when it's Holocaust imagery or slavery imagery, but when it's a preborn, which is actively happening now, it's not an injustice that happened then.
Sure.
Everyone thinks it's super insensitive and unchristian. I have no patience for it. Anyways, so that was a fundamental turning point in my life because here I am as a pro-life son of a former pregnancy resource center homeschool Christian kid. If anyone should have already seen the photos of aborted babies, it should have been me. I should have seen that probably at 13 or 14.
Sure.
Here I am. I'm 18. I'm seeing it for the first time.
So let's pause for a minute because we're kind of bridging this gap between the issue of pro-life and then really infusing truth into the mind of a child. And I think one thing parents really need to get up to speed on, like now, is that you are supposed to be the primary source of truth, and that starts early, and it should happen consistently.
Yeah. But no, Kamala Harris thinks that the state is a better parent to your children.
I'm sure she does.
Yeah.
Well, when you are the state.
That's the legislation they're pushing, as you know, all around the country is to remove parents from the discussion. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, when and how and where, you got to pray about it, parent, if you're listening to this. But I would say, I believe personally that children are fully ready and should be shown some of the horrors of this world in the early teenage years, maybe 12, 13. I think if you're old enough to be having kids, not that you should, but I'm saying like, if like, you know what I mean? Hey, it used to be normal to get married at 13, 200 years ago and be a dad, and you were a masculine stud by the time you were 16. I'd actually like to get back to that kind of healthy culture. But, it's shocking that I meet adult Christians in their 40s who have never seen what abortion does to babies.
Sure.
So it's easy to be pro-choice when you never have to look at what that choice looks like. It's also easy to be pro-life and do nothing about it when you never have to look at what abortion does to those children.
Absolutely.
And so that was a real turning point for me. And so do it wisely, parents. Do it graciously, obviously. Pray about it. But I think at some point, well before your children leave your home, I think they need to be shown these evils. And you need to be insulating them, actually, against paganism. You need to be insulating them against it because they will deal with arguments that will tear down their faith if they haven't been equipped.
Yep.
So
I believe wholeheartedly that it's way better to plant seeds than try and pull weeds.
Oh,
right?
totally, yeah.
And if the world is going to talk to your kids about it, which they're going to, and you can't hide your homeschooler forever, right? We've homeschooled a predominant piece of our children's education. It's been up and down and all over the place, but they still watch and see and integrate into the world now more than you think, and for sure at some point they will integrate into society.
Yep.
And so you want to be the first voice.
Yep.
There's no doubt about it. I love what you said, graciously, tactfully, winsomely, but let them know, right? Put some fuel on the fire of righteousness.
Yeah.
An 18-year-old graduating high school should not just be pro-life. They should be passionately, vehemently pro-life.
Yeah, like doing things to end it.
And that's what those pictures sort of helped seal for you.
Yeah. Well, so was it 19... might have been 1942. Eisenhower visits Ohrdruf concentration camp and is horrified. It might have been 43, 44. Don't hold me to the dates, guys. I'm not Bill Federer. I'll get there, but and he's horrified at the smell and at the sights. Eisenhower then calls all of the soldiers within the area who are not on the front lines to come to Ohrdruf. And he makes them tour it. And then he famously said, "I've been told the American soldier does not know what he's fighting for. At least now he'll know what he's fighting against."
Powerful words. And I think that's the issue of our time. There's these words and verbiage that we kind of get what it means, but at the same time, we probably don't understand.
Yeah, they're called euphemisms. He who defines the words defines the world, to quote John Locke. He who defines the words defines the world. Why? Because language shapes the way we think, and it colors the way we see the world.
Gosh, how powerful. Think of that. Even with just in the last few years, right? They're commandeering phrases or statements or words,
Yep.
even from the whole love is love thing.
Yeah.
It's like, well, gosh, who would be against that?
Yep.
Until you find out they're completely shifting and twisting. They're warping
Well, they've been doing
love.
it for decades,
Yep.
actually. We're just more aware of it with like the weird kooky sex stuff.
Yep.
And like reproductive healthcare and transgenderism, gender affirming healthcare. But like they've been doing it actually for decades. Think about this one. Responsibility. What did that used to mean? This dude is a moral, upright dude. He can be relied upon. He's a man of his word. What he says, he means. He has a good work ethic.
Yep.
You can count on him. Decades ago, the sexual revolutionaries began to co-opt the term to mean, did you wear a condom? Were you responsible?
Sure.
Wait, what? That's not what responsible means.
Yeah, not even
So
close.
they've actually been doing it. Tolerance.
Oh, yeah.
Tolerance actually assumes that I disagree with you. Otherwise, what's there to be tolerant of?
Yep.
So tolerance assumes that we disagree, but I'm going to tolerate you. I'm going to respect you enough to tolerate you, not treat you like a jerk or whatever. And maybe I'll even like tolerate your right to hold that position if it's not like, oh, we should kill the Jews, you know,
Sure.
from the river to the sea. It's like, well, I'm not going to tolerate that, but like, but you know, like maybe it's a position that's like a little bit more less intense or evil. I'm going to tolerate that. Well, now tolerance means approval, actually.
Yeah.
They've actually completely changed it. When they say they want tolerance, the assumption that they're making is that you approve of me.
Yep. You have to tolerate me, but I don't have to tolerate
you. That's actually not the definition of tolerance. Tolerance assumes that we disagree.
Yes.
And so they've done this for literally decades. And so it has changed the culture because culture is to us what water is to a fish.
Sure.
It's all we know because it's all we swim in.
Yep.
So as the culture continues to change, if you don't have a true north, objective morality, Jesus, God, the Bible, then you will be tossed to and fro. And you actually will become more discipled by the culture than by the scripture.
That's worth leaning into because I think as we talk about all of these things, you can't change something if it's based on a lie unless someone first forfeits the truth. Right? Someone who has the truth has to forfeit their stance in order for you to propagate the lie.
Yep.
And we're seeing now, unfortunately, we are now just reaping what we have sown. Those who had the truth didn't tend and keep it. It's the same thing Adam and Eve were told in the garden. Tend and keep the garden, right? Be busy, work hard, take care of what God's given you.
Yeah.
We were told the same thing. But if you don't, what was the curse? The weeds and everything would become completely corrupt. It seems like in the decades gone by, the tending and cultivating of truth was kind of left to the wayside as if it would just tend itself.
Yeah.
And here we are.
It's because we stand on the shoulders of giants and we think that we're flying. We forgot the price at which freedom and liberty came, actually. So we started taking for granted because Western civilization is a byproduct of Christendom. I'll say that again. Western civilization is a byproduct of Christendom. Capitalism, the free market, a constitutional republic. These things are all the fruit of biblical faith, because all of it was based off of a Judeo-Christian worldview. Like, guess what, y'all? As much as you might hate Christianity, if you're a weird kooky pagan who's into the weird sex trans stuff, you got to admit this whole idea of equal rights, this whole idea that women they're individual persons and shouldn't be treated as the property of their husbands. Like you want to know what changed all that? Historically, across civilizations across the world, is Christianity. It was this idea that we were created in the image of God. There's sanctity of life. You should respect the fellow man. I don't know how to put this any clearer. Abortion, exposure, child sacrifice, and other forms of infanticide, to quote my mentor, Dr. George Grant, more often than not, were both legal and respectable in pagan societies. I'm not just legal and respectable. It was assumed, y'all, in most pagan societies in antiquity that if there was something wrong with your baby when it was born, not only are you justified in discarding it and leaving it out in the forest to die from exposure or from wild beasts, you were actually it was assumed you would.
Sure.
It wasn't just justified. You were actually expected to.
Absolutely.
Just try again. You don't want that kid. Like this idea that we're all created in the image of God, we have these equal rights and dignity, completely foreign before Christ. And then slowly, civilizations begin to pivot and change after the resurrection, after go to the uttermost, to the very ends of the earth, proclaiming the gospel, all these things. So we took that for granted in the West. We just started assuming, because cultural Marxism, trying to destroy Christianity, replace it with really paganism, it takes a long time because of our form of government, because of how unique this American experiment was, and even in the timing of how America got created. Had America been founded like right before Darwin, like in the mid 1800s, you wouldn't have had an America. Because there wouldn't have been enough cultural respect and like-mindedness around these Judeo-Christian ideals to have made America flourish and be successful in the first place. It was like even the timing of America being founded in 1776, is one of the primary factors of its success, actually. So I believe America's providential, God thing. So we just can't take that for granted. We're like, wow, equal rights, sanctity of life, right to life, liberty, property, pursuit of happiness. We got comfortable. We got lazy. We started assuming that liberty would be perpetual. And then what happens? The sexual revolution starts hitting. Cultural Marxism starts hitting. Then you get Hitler. Then you get Roe v. Wade in 1973, and things start to unravel really quickly. Really quickly. And the church still didn't wake up. Then no-fault divorce laws. Family starts disintegrating. And now here we are in 2024. And we're all kind of like, what in the heck is going on? Why? Because we stopped being salty. We stopped doing kingdom and civilization building as a way to honor our king. And so it's anyways, all this stuff kind of coalesces and all goes together, because this is the heritage of our faith. This is the history of Christendom. It wasn't just the proclamation of the gospel. It was the gospel led to social transformation. Because it wasn't just a message, it was a way of life.
Well, the Bible, that's what's wild to me. I think people who propagate just preach the word perhaps haven't really even read the Bible, because repeatedly and then bold-faced by the time you get to the New Testament is be a doer of the word, not a hearer only. Why? Lest you trick yourself. You're going to end up deceiving yourself. The moment you're not committed to doing what's written on the page out of eternity, you have actually dazzled your own mind into believing something that's not true. And that's where even the lie that's been so embraced by the church is we don't want to be offensive. If you mean rude, well, don't be rude or crass or insensitive, but the gospel is offensive. Jesus said, I didn't come to bring peace, but the sword. And when I bring this truth, it might even set families against one another.
I mean, even the woman at the well, when caught in adultery, it's I don't condemn you. Go and sin no more. So it's like, stop doing what you're doing. It's like, so I mean, the pastors in the churches, Pastor Dave, that have moved the Overton window in evangelicalism so far left. I mean, they've abdicated their pulpit.
Now, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, or I'd love for you to speak on this. It seems like there's a moment in time that we exist right now where there's a chance to push abortion back. Is this the one and only chance we get? What do we do with that opportunity? I think the window is pretty short. Are you seeing that as you go around and speak?
Well, the overturning of Roe was, incredible.
That's enormous.
And providential, and I talked about that today at your church. But this is like go time. It's like time to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, put on your big boy pants. We're off to the races. Like, Roe's overturned. This is the best opportunity we have now to maintain that momentum and actually end this. So obviously justice requires a federal ban on abortion. So like none of this, you ever read the old Lincoln Douglas debates? So Stephen Douglas supported states' rights. But we would say, well, there's nothing just about half the states abolishing slavery and the other half just owning them forever. We would say, oh no, that's not federalism. There's actually a role for the federal government when you're abusing natural rights like the right to life. Same thing's true with abortion. So we actually need a federal ban on abortion. Meaning like I don't care what your state legislators say, you don't get to kill children. So that's actually the end of justice. And there actually does need to be consequences to killing babies. Like a lot of pro-lifers are uncomfortable with this. My buddy John Root, good buddy of mine, influencer and great Christian brother, was with us in DC, and he was asking pro-lifers this at the March for Life. Do you believe a woman or father family should actually face criminal punishment if they kill their kid when abortion's illegal? And a lot of pro-lifers don't want to answer that question. They get really uncomfortable because the pro-life movement for a long time has sold this narrative that the woman is the second victim. And by the way, sometimes she is. I'm willing to acknowledge that the abortion industry preys on women, lies to them.
There's no doubt.
So in a way, she is the second victim. But yeah. Anyways, it's a complicated conversation. But if you kill your kid, you don't get off scot-free. Now, if you pay an abortionist to do it, then he would be the murderer, and you'd be tried as an accomplice to murder.
Yep.
Right. But if you get the abortion pill, and no one made you kill the baby, then you're kind of the dominant murderer in that circumstance. So anyway, a lot of pro-lifers are uncomfortable with this language. But if we're not willing to say, if our case is that the preborn child has the same right to life and dignity as the toddler, then why shouldn't the consequences for killing unborn babies be the same as for killing toddlers?
If we're calling it murder, then we have to start there.
Yeah.
Then it is murder.
But this is going to take a while. Right,
Yep.
That's going to take a while, and I don't think our current political system is going to tolerate, out of nowhere, just a president coming in and putting a federal ban on abortion. I would love that. That's what justice would entail. It's unfortunately, I'm not saying how I want things to be. If you're listening to me right now, I'm just saying how it's probably going to turn out. It's probably going to take one state at a time. And what's the constitutional amendment? 42. 42 states. Where's Bill Federer when you need him? Where's David Barton?
Yeah, I know.
I think it's 42. You guys can fact check me as you listen to this podcast, but that's a lot of states in order to get a constitutional amendment and actually ban abortion.
But we're seeing it begin.
Yeah.
We are watching the beginning of it.
Yeah.
One room in the house at a time, the lights are coming on. If you were standing in the street, it's the light turned on in the living room and then the hallway. And now is the time, if there ever was one, for truth to reawaken and put their hands to the plow and not look back.
Yep.
I mean, even here in Idaho, we're seeing the state legislatures put forth policies and different legislation that really would protect the life of the preborn child. But what's fascinating is that they're hearing, sometimes their words are, we're hearing more from the liberal side, because just because a policy is put forward doesn't mean it's going to pass and become law. And so what has to happen is they put it forward, it becomes public knowledge, and then they want to hear from the public. Should we pass this or not? And they're getting a lot of please don't pass these righteous bills. And they need to hear from those who know the truth. They need to hear from Christians. They need to hear from righteousness.
Yeah. Yep.
And so, look, we don't necessarily have to get our muskets out and go to war right now. We're at a time, especially in Idaho or any states that are starting to wake up, where an email is better than a bullet. A phone call, oh my gosh, goes a long way. And usually they don't even pick up. My name is David. I'm asking that you would vote yes on whatever. And you hang up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the coward's way out, to be totally honest with you.
Totally.
But it works.
Yep. And the left has done this. I mean, that's why I think for the left, politics is liturgy. Because the left is, just completely unmoored from any religious identity, right, or spiritual reality.
Yep.
And so Christians have turned to their small groups, their church, their Sunday morning worship, their Saturday church barbecue. And this is all good things. This is Christian fellowship. It's wonderful. But the left doesn't have those things. So what do they turn to? Sure, they have community with leftists. They find community with like-minded pagans. But also they just get really involved. So most Christians in America maybe find their identity in some spiritual disciplines and stuff. And then we stopped caring about the business of the public square. Whereas I think the left politics almost becomes liturgical for the left, actually. It's actually where they find their identity in a cause, in action, and then in victories. We got the policy through. We got the law through. Because everyone has to find their identity. Everyone has to find meaning somewhere. And guess what? When you do get involved in the business of politics, it is exciting. because you're like, wow, this is we the people. Like, and of course they're using it for wickedness, right?
No
but
doubt.
it's like, oh wow, like this is a marginally still free country, and we can get involved and shape laws and change things and advance righteousness or wickedness. Like,
Yep.
but it's we the people getting involved. It actually is an exciting thing when you get engaged in it, and I think for the left, they've thrown themselves into the business of the public square, and they have shifted the culture. So you know the famous Anthony Breitbart line. Politics is downstream of culture. That's true, but culture is also downstream of politics.
Yep.
So it's actually a two-way street. We forget that sometimes. So yes, the kind of culture you have will dictate the kind of citizens that are a byproduct of that culture. Therefore, that will dictate the kind of politicians you get in the laws and the worldview that those politicians hold when they go to the Senate.
Yep.
You know, but culture's also downstream from politics. Law, statecraft can also shape culture. Here's an example. Let's see. I don't know. BLM incorporated in Antifa, summer of 2020. How many people were prosecuted, thrown in jail for years for burning down police stations or courthouses or privately owned businesses? Basically
Close
none.
to none, yeah.
And Kamala Harris tweeted out people forgot about this. Kamala Harris tweeted out a fundraising link to raise money to pay the bail.
Sure.
For people who were looting, rioting, and burning. She was months away from becoming the VP. No. Yeah, she was months away from becoming the VP. And like, what? So what do I mean? That was a law, or lack thereof.
Yep.
And that affected the culture. Here's another example. Abortion. Roe v. Wade. You know the median, the average annual abortions in America in like the late 60s, 1970, like before Roe, was like 98,000. Do you know what the totals were in like 74, 75, 76? 1.6 million.
Okay.
So did law influence behavior? We legalized abortion and you got a lot of abortions. Did that affect the culture? Yeah, so that's an example of culture being downstream of politics. It's actually a two-way street, and we need to be involved in both.
Think through this, and I think we're going to kind of do a big veering turn here, because right now, as a state, we're facing this week. In the next few days, it will be decided. There's someone putting forth legislation that wants to officially incorporate into civil liberties gender identity. And I mean, we're on the cusp. It's either about to happen in Idaho this week.
Yeah, so if you don't let them go into the bathroom, you violated their civil rights.
Absolutely. It destroys any other stance. But talk about now 15, 20 years from now, when the 5-year-old is now 20, and all they've known is, well, the law says.
That's why I said law is a teacher.
Right?
Yeah.
And so policy is trying vehemently to shape the future
So
culture.
see, the left knows.
Yeah, they do.
The left knows that culture is downstream from politics.
Yep.
But the conservatives took the other way, and they said, well, politics is downstream of culture, so we got to contend in the culture. But guess what? The left did both the whole time.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Look at how they changed the culture through Hollywood and entertainment. Holy moly. But also look how they changed the culture through politics. Right? So it's always a two-way street.
So have you heard of the Truth Project from Del Tackett?
Yeah, I went through that when I was homeschooled.
You may remember the quote better than I do, but he says something along the lines at the beginning that there is no direction in which you can travel in which Christ does not belong.
Well, so he's ripping off of Abraham Kuyper, it
There you
sounds
go.
like. There's
Okay.
not one square inch in the whole domain of human existence over which Christ, who is sovereign over all, does not scream mine.
There you go. I've never heard it that way. I like that one. That's good. So can we do kind of a left and then a right turn here?
Thank you for tuning in to Ready or Not. We will resume the discussion on this important topic in our next episode.